Hey, I am with you guys today for the second part of the Ultimate Roguelike Deck Builder tier list, where I rank over 150 of them. It's been a long time since I published part 1, but I learned the hard way that it was very difficult being consistent in making YouTube videos. Although now part 3 is on the way, it's almost ready. I made those two simultaneously, and so part 3 is going to be up in less than 2 weeks. If you want to subscribe again, it's coming soon. I hope you guys enjoy the video, and let's hop in. So coming up first is a very good game to kickstart the second part of our tier list, because it's a game where you do a lot of kicking. It's Fights in Tight Spaces. That is a very famous roguelike deck builder where you kick bad guys' asses with crazy martial arts moves in the form of a tactical, turn-based, square grid action combat game. And so, yeah, it's obviously one of the very good ones that's universally appreciated for good reasons. The deck building is fun and tight, the game is highly replayable. It has a style of its own with the color palette in black and white with the touches of color here and there. It's very clean, very well made game overall. It's never been my favorite because I just always gravitate towards the more colorful, more overflowing, lavish, you could say, games where Fights in Tight Spaces leans more towards the minimal, clean, limited side of things. But apart from that, it is of course very well made, catchy, easy to understand and to get into for someone who's not deeply versed into the genre especially, and I can't wait to play their next game. That's going to be called, I think, Nights in Tight Spaces, and it looks even more my type of game than Fights in Tight Spaces was. And so yeah, it goes in B tier for me, but I could see this game very well be an A or an S tier for you. Now for the Warp is a Slay the Spire meets FTL kind of roguelike deck builder. You got spaceships in outer space fighting. I know the reviews on Steam are something like 2/3 positive. It is a small game obviously, but very charming, I think, with pretty graphics and pretty theme, like beautiful pixel art. Honestly, it's been a while that I've played this one, but if you like FTL and this space setting and controlling a spaceship, you're gonna enjoy this one. It's pretty good. It is also thematically very interesting. And so for the Warp, goes and join Fights in Tight Spaces in the B tier. Next up is 45, a roguelike deck builder where your cards are bullets and you're a cowboy in the Wild West, chasing thieves, encountering bad guys, doing pistol duels, gunfight. It is really cool thematically. The combat also works around a unique gun barrel system where you load bullets that serve both as offense and defense in combat. They can combo together. You can do some crazy builds with some crazy types of bullets that do unique effects. There's also a great mechanic where your loot at the end of combat depends on how much overkill damage you did to the enemy, and I thought that was really clever. It encourages you to do some crazy builds to get the craziest loot. I think it was the first time I had actually seen a mechanic like that in a game. Some turns are also pretty unique. The most exciting ones are timed turns that can make you do some really dumb stuff just because you're nervous and you got 30 seconds to place your bullets and shoot them. It's great, honestly, and one of the things that make this game 100% worth your time is that it's actually an open source game that is free on Steam right now, and I think there's a big modding community around it, and so if you like the game a lot, there's definitely something to sink your teeth into. I think the game could benefit from more weapons, maybe just a bit more content, but I'm guessing the mods must fix that, right? It is absolutely great for all of those reasons. Simple, well executed, I quite like it. Just simple as that, with more content, that could almost be an S tier game. It is just, in its base form, very simple, very straightforward, and so I'm gonna give 45 an A tier. Coming up next is Genkai Primal Awakening. That's a tactical roguelike deck builder with some Pokemon aspects about it. You basically capture goofy creatures, make them fight for you, and your hand of cards is basically buffs for you guys, and you switch between buff mode and combat mode. It had everything I liked about a roguelike deck builder, except maybe for the tactical part. I think it was goofy, colorful, fun to play around with your creatures, and like the way they combo together. When I played it, it was just a demo on Steam. I haven't checked if it's become a full released game now. I'm guessing not. You know how it is with those games. It has a ton of balance, UI, builds issues, but it's cool, right? And it's definitely worth checking out, and I'll be playing the full game when it's released. I did play a few hours of it, and so I'm gonna give it a C tier for now. Goblin Stone. So when I first opened Goblin Stone, the game, I thought, oh god, the packaging is insane. Like, this game has insane production value for a game like this. That's not very famous, that has mixed reviews on Steam. It presents itself very well. You see the small goblins walking around, the lush grass, the environments, the scenery. It is all very fancy and very beautiful. Well, unfortunately, it turns out that Goblin Stone is a very fancy guest at a dinner party who also happens to have very boring conversation. And so when you get deeper into the game, you realize it is unfinished. So it is beautiful. It was promising when I launched it, but it is unfinished and it is very boring after an hour or two. So my mind was made up. I did not play a lot of this one. I think Goblin Stone is D tier, but obviously a D tier, a very well presented D tier and very pretty, and that deserves to be finished and polished. Now, Gordian Quest is a heavily tactical roguelike deck builder that's fairly well known amongst the roguelike enthusiasts. It has over 40,000 reviews on Steam at the moment when I'm making this video. It is an interesting one, I guess. It does what it tries to do with some elegance and some mastery. It obviously has a very high production value and is famous for a reason. If you know me by now, you know this is not exactly my cup of tea. When I'm playing a deck builder, as I've said, I want to be building decks most of the time and playing with the deck building aspect of the game. And I don't really want to be clicking through dialogues and stories of characters. I want to be just playing the deck building, right? And so in this game, that's very much an adventure RPG of sorts. Well, it was not the one for me. So I think that could be a great game for you. It's obviously worth your time if you care about stories and adventure and RPGs. It's not really like I'm a pure deck builder guy, and so for me, Gordian Quest is gotta go in C tier, but obviously I've had some fun playing this. Some builds were nice. I was just too much into the nitty-gritty of the tactical, and then I had to advance the stories of the characters. I got a little bit lost in the process, and so C tier for Gordian Quest. It's funny how the alphabetical order goes, because next game coming up on our list right after Gordian Quest is Griftlands. And Griftlands is actually, I think, the only game on this list that made me care about a story in a roguelike. So it's another one that has kind of a budget. It feels like a AAA of the genre. Characters are great. Basically, you got missions, side quests, and you advance through the story between your runs. There's a light meta progression system. I like that. Everything is well put together in this. You know how in roguelike deck builders, sometimes you have either too much gold and it feels inconsequential. You can basically buy anything. Or sometimes you have too little and then you can't really play with your deck. But then in Griftlands, the gold is very tight and it's just enough to make you feel like it's a resource that matters. And you're going to count your gold like dime per dime to be able to buy like the card you want. You can't really like kill everybody just because of the story. I'm not sure that's my favorite system that's in the game, just because sometimes you're gonna play mindlessly and kill a guy by accident and then it's gonna screw up your quest or make you start a war with a faction you liked or whatever. You also have two different decks and two different kinds of battles. You got the actual fighting, and then you got the persuasion. Mechanics are similar, though it's a slight twist that's fun and not too demanding. If you know me, you know I don't like dialogues in gaming, but Griftlands really does it differently, and I don't know how it does it, but I actually can remember some of the characters, even if I played it like 6 months ago. And so I think Griftlands kind of deserves the A tier because of how high quality it is. For me, just because of the overall pacing and because it's not my absolute favorite, I'm gonna put it in B tier. Next game coming up is Gwent Rogue Mage. That's the single-player roguelike spin-off of the Witcher trading card game. I have seen on Steam that this game has a lot of negative reviews, mainly coming from players who've played the original Witcher multiplayer card game and were disappointed by this version of it, thinking it was a watered-down, probably not subtle enough, too simple version of the real game. I have not played it. I have not played the original game, and so I'm reviewing this strictly based off, was it good? Did I have a fun time as a solo player? And I did. I have to say I tend not to agree with the comments. I think the game is really good. Cards do not fight directly with a Hearthstone style attack defense stat. Instead, they like face each other and stack score, and the higher score wins at the end. It's really refreshing. I thought it was cool. Your character got powerful spells, you got a mana resource that does not replenish between fights, and so you gotta cast your spells very carefully. That is kind of tensed and very interesting to balance. Graphically, it is very impressive. Obviously, coming from a publisher that has a lot of money, it grows on you. Like when you visit different locations, you really get involved in the setting and aesthetics. It feels like an adventure, Witcher 3 style, like a real, actual Witcher adventure. It has tremendous grind, though, and meta progression needed in order to advance and play new decks, get the good cards, etc. You can't really play like different builds before the grind. Like you gotta grind to try out different builds. That's locked behind meta progression. That's pretty sad, and that's the part I didn't like so much. Also, decks are pre-constructed, which is weird. Often it feels unfair, and you have very little agency over what happens a lot of the time. But apart from that, and the fact that the game is also brutal, it's just a great, fun, high production value experience, and I encourage you guys to try this one out. So maybe with less grind and more polish, it could go with the big boys. For now, it's going to be a low A tier for Gwent Rogue Mage. I think I said earlier in the list, or maybe it was in part 1, I think I mentioned that there was one game that was coming up that was the only game for me that did the tactical roguelike deck builder right, at least to my preference, and it is the next game coming up, Hadean Tactics. The game is part auto battler, part tactical, and you have cards in your hand that are going to boost your troops. Combat is live and it stops every few seconds. You draw a hand of cards and then you play your cards and you start combat again, and it happens every few seconds. That makes fights extremely dynamic, and it's a great idea because you really have to have a good deck, because your deck is going to cycle many times and sometimes you're going to need a specific answer to a specific problem. Like the combat is really going to matter, and your cards are really gonna matter. Everything is really tight and well put together. It's a great idea overall. Builds are fun. When you've beaten the game a few times, you can like create your own hero, own builds. There's just a lot with it. And I played countless hours of it. I think I must be at something over like 50 hours. I think I'm gonna find myself playing this over and over again because Hadean Tactics is just good. And it found a way to make a tactical deck builder interesting and fun, and not too grindy, because you don't have actually to control your characters. I like that sometimes you find a completely busted companion that will carry your team completely. Your deck won't even matter. I mean, there's a lot of things going on and it's a lot of fun. I think Hadean Tactics, for someone who's not a purist like me, who's not completely lost for Slay the Spire, I think someone could put this in S tier. I will put it in A tier, but know that Hadean Tactics is a very high A tier and a very good game overall. Handmancers is a game that I played as part of the Steam Neck Fest last year. It was just a demo. I'm not sure, I haven't checked if the game is out yet. It has a lot of potential. I like the full 3D graphics, the goofy enemies, like the nice animations. It's going to be a great one. It's basically all themed around rock, paper, scissors, but it takes twists on this basic concept. It's very elegant thematically. There's a cool card crafting system with busted upgrades, and then your card designs changes when you upgrade them. It's pretty nice, and nothing not to like about this game. I'm waiting to see how they're gonna stretch it out to a full game. So right now, probably going to Not Enough Played. Hand of Fate 1 and 2 now. Are those games really Slay the Spire likes? Not really, I don't think you can say that. Why did I put them in my list though? Well, they do have cards and they are roguelikes and they're pretty famous, and so I thought, okay, I'm just gonna put them in. Also, a lot of people have strong opinions on those games. I think a lot of people play them, but some people have criticism. Like, some people are gonna say, alright, you got a mix of an action RPG and then you got a roguelike deck builder, but none of the two are really polished enough. It's like two half-finished games together. I think there's some truth to that. It's not the best system out there. It's a little slow and the combat is not especially engaging. I just think I kind of enjoyed my time playing them again recently just for this video, because I thought, okay, it's refreshing between two very grindy, very brain demanding roguelike deck builders. Okay, you got something simple, you got something fun, you can slash bad guys with a sword or a polearm or whatever. And so I think I'm gonna put them in C tier just because they're not great, but they're refreshing. Heat Death now is a space roguelike deck builder where you play as a planet fighting other celestial bodies. I will say I have not played enough of this one. It tired me very quickly, especially because it was so weird graphically. I like a game with beautiful cards and beautiful enemies, and this game you are like a triangle and a circle, and everything is very abstract, everything is very peculiar. I might give it another try later. For now, it has to go in not played enough. I chose to put Hearthstone Battlegrounds in my list just because I played a lot of it, and I think a lot of modes actually of Hearthstone could be called roguelike deck builders of sorts, like the old duel mode definitely was, Arena kind of is. Well, Hearthstone was really a game that shaped the past 10 years of card games, I think 15 years now. It's great, I have nothing to say bad about it. The new seasons in Battlegrounds are always interesting. I don't play all of them, but I know in the back of my mind there's always Hearthstone, and it's always a benchmark for all the rest. It's kind of a pioneer in the way Slay the Spire was. And so I think I'm gonna give it an A tier, but it's an A tier of respect, and I'm not sure it's really worth a spot in this list. It's just for respect to the legacy of this game. Alright, now Hellcard. Hellcard is a roguelike deck builder that's got its 1.0 version released earlier this year, and I was very impressed by it. I think it's actually in my personal top 3 favorite tactical roguelike deck builders. It is very good, it is very interesting. It has, like, the special gimmick is that the battlefield is divided in 3 sections, 3 areas, right? And every one of your 3 heroes has one of the areas assigned to him, and there are interactions between the zones and the enemies and your spells. It's fairly interesting. It gives a nice sense of space to the battles. So basically the monsters, skeletons and demons and flaming skulls come at you from the 3 sides, and you got your small heroic fantasy party heroes in the middle, and then you shoot arrows, you cast powerful spells, you try to hold them back, basically hold back the swarm. You really feel like you're in the Moria mines of Lord of the Rings with your little heroic fantasy party swarmed by enemies, swarmed by monsters in dark caves, dimly lit by torches and flaming skulls. It's really entertaining, right? And it's a very well designed roguelike. I think you have to try this one. It's a very good one. It might not be as addictive as some others, just because of how long the fights and the runs feel, but it can definitely keep you hooked on for some time. I like the setting. I like the tactical elements that are not too complicated. I think it's just a plain success, and Hellcard deserves A tier. Heretic's Fork now is a roguelike deck builder tower defense game that's also kind of reminiscent of a lot of Vampire Survivors. You've got a tower in the middle, and then it fights hordes of enemies coming from all sides. I'm not sure this really deserved a spot in this list, but it's featured in a lot of roguelike deck builder tier lists. It's definitely not my type of game. It can feel very samey at times between runs. There's a very nice setting and atmosphere to it. The cool thing is your like hub world between runs is a computer screen, and there's all sort of weird stuff happening on the computer. You got icons on your desktop that are evolving, and it's all satanic, awful, grim, dark stuff. The setting is very interesting. It's graphically coherent, it really works. It's just not the one for me. It deserves a spot. I think Heretic's Fork deserves a spot in C tier. I like the idea. It's just not the perfect game for me because it's a Vampire Survivor tower defense. and I'm not gonna want to play this one over and over again. I remember though I had a few cool runs where, you know, you get all of the good upgrades and then your gun does insane damage and you like wipe out everybody. It's just, well, yeah, not my type. So C tier for Heretic's Fork. So coming up on the list, we got Heroes Wanted. That's a Chinese roguelike deck builder with a chibi anime art style. That's very much not for me. The game has some qualities though. It has a somewhat fresh game system where you place your guys and then they attack together, interacting together with their position. There are elemental combos. It's alright. It's nothing spectacular. It just didn't really hold my attention for too long, and it has a lot to do with the aesthetics of it all, which are, I say again, very much not for me. So if you don't mind that, maybe give it a try. But for me, it's a C tier, just because of the art style and because it didn't really hook me in. I don't think I played much more than like 1 or 2 hours of this. And so C tier for Heroes Wanted. Next up is In These Lies, a roguelike deck builder Slay the Spire-like that's not reinventing anything, that's just a plain, simple Slay the Spire-like, polished, beautiful graphics with a lot of content, a big story mode, challenge mode, a nice campaign for each of the characters, unlockable stuff, but no big meta progression. It has all of your basics, the shops, factions, classes, combo cards, unique keywords for every of the characters, unique play styles, and then the big twist is you got 3 guys. Every time you defeat a boss in the regular roguelike mode, you have the option to add a new character to your party, and then each character that you recruit comes with a small package of cards that's going to be added to your main deck. And I thought that was a clever and not too complicated way to make it 3 characters. I don't really like managing 3 decks at once, and then with this way of doing it, it kind of works because you can kind of just do a bit of everything and focus on your hero still. Only thing is, it can be a little confusing at first, and then sometimes you won't even really care about your party allies. You're gonna just want to focus on your main build if it's really fun. It's just good. It's an overall good game. One thing is, girls have enormous breasts also in this one, so that could be a pro or a con depending on where you're standing on that. Apart from that, it is very classy graphically, very thematically coherent. I like In These Lies a lot. I think there's no like real better way to do a Slay the Spire-like game. If you wanted to do more, you'd have to change some basics, and then In These Lies doesn't change the basics. It just does it well, and it's a game I'll never like not want to play a run of. It could kind of be an S tier, although it's not like anything that memorable, and so In These Lies, for everything it does right, and for being something that's very much in my lane, I'm gonna give it an A tier. Inscryption now is a mysterious horror, puzzle, kind of roguelike deck builder adventure. That's mostly a story mode with a lot of different elements, but the core is really deck building, roguelike deck building. It is very different from Slay the Spire, obviously, but it might be one that even your normie, sane friends, I mean gamers who don't play roguelikes, might have heard of. Inscryption got insanely famous. I think it got a few like indie games rewards a few years back. I have not played the story mode fully. I think I might have played something like 3 or 4 hours and could not finish the game in that time. It tries to do a lot. It is not solely focused on the deck building, Slay the Spire fighting thing, and so it's not the one for me. I just thought I'd put it in the list just considering how famous it is. And so for me, Inscryption is a great game, probably overall, but as of this list, it has to go in B tier for being an overall well-made, polished game, but not really the most addictive deck builder experience. I'm seeing that right now, coming up on our list, is the big piece, the highlight of the show, In the Dark. Where should I start? In the Dark is an absolute mess of a video game. It had 4 reviews on Steam at the time when I played it. You can't say now that I didn't go in depth with this tier list, literally scraping the bottom of the barrel of roguelike deck builders. Like, you can't say I haven't gone into great lengths to discover the unique gems of the deck builder genre, because I might be the only guy on earth in 2025 playing In the Dark, and I probably shouldn't be proud of this. So the game is a total disaster, as I said. And on top of that, it is an absolute cursed piece of media that should have never been made or even thought of. So you're gonna go in with doubts at first, after paying $13 for it, because the trailer is a mess and it is profoundly ugly. And then you're gonna launch the game and you're gonna be immediately cursed for life. The assets are some of the ugliest you'll ever see in any video game, period. Next to In the Dark, Aranorth Reborn, which I mentioned in the first part of the tier list, and that got a place in D tier, is a visual masterpiece. So you go through chunks of roads, it's like 3D environments, and there are floating corpses everywhere, clipping through the textures. There are NPCs also in this game, but you can't really say they have actual lines of dialogue. They're most of the time just groaning or squealing, and it's going to be nightmare fuel for your next few nights. Combat is clunky. Cards are like not even cards for some of them. Like you can't really comment on the balance of their respective strengths because there is no builds really. There's no coherent ideas behind all of the random, like all of the general randomness of things. It's rare attempts to be an actual game are laughable. So what's keeping you going is the absolute mess of it, finding curiosities and unique screamers, cursed NPCs, or buggy cards that they forgot to put text on. But there's no game, really. You're just gonna be watching this atrocity unfold and not really be able to act on it or to influence your destiny. Sometimes you'll arrive into an area and there's just a zombie slime thing on the ground that you should be able to click on, but you can't, and you have to concede your run. Sometimes you'll pick an artifact and it's just a screamer of a purple monkey ogre thing that makes a jump scare and has no listed effect, and there's nothing else. When you gain loot, it's like body parts, it's whatever, it's garbage. If I find out someday that it's genuine and the devs really thought they were onto something, I might like dive into it, maybe make a video about it. It would kind of deserve that. There's something interesting with seeing this thing unfold. So there is something in the Dark that is so corny and cursed that I don't encourage that you buy it. And I don't think anyone should really play this, but if you do by accident or because you're masochistic, well, it might kind of leave a lasting impression on you more than other games because of its general like corniness and cursedness. But there's no reason for this game to exist, right? And so of course it's gonna go in D tier, but know that it's a very special one and it has a very special place in D tier. So that was In the Dark. Please don't play it. And also it might have its chance at earning the worst roguelike deck builder of all time award. Yeah, it's probably worse than Aranorth Reborn. Into the Dungeon now is a roguelike co-op deck builder game that I know I have at least opened once in my life, but it has mixed reviews on Steam. I was not especially motivated to try it, I was not especially excited, and then also I would have had to find friends to play with, and it's really hard to convince friends to play a probably average game in an already niche genre. And so I could not convince anyone to play with me. I might someday. For now, Into the Dungeon goes into not played enough. Just know that if you're looking for a co-op experience, that might not be it. I just know it's not for me graphically. It's kind of goofy. And so not played enough for Into the Dungeon. Might play it someday. Alright, so what do we got next? I think it is... Oh yeah, Iris and the Giant. So Iris and the Giant is a very peculiar roguelike deck builder, extremely unsettling for a Slay the Spire fan. If you're heading into this thinking you're gonna play Slay the Spire, you absolutely aren't. But still, it is a roguelike deck builder with cards. It is very unique thematically and graphically. It's kind of all, you can see in the image, it's kind of all 2D, colorful, cardboard, papercraft style. Probably should take a look at this game just because of how different it is, but it is absolutely not the game for me. It is too far from being Slay the Spire, and I like games that are like Slay the Spire. It kind of made me feel like it was a children's game, although it being very hard, but it was very simple I'm not sure what they were going for with this. I should look into it. I'm not sure like who designed this. It has an underlying psychological story or message into it, which I did not really care about. It has a story that's whatever. The system itself is alright, but I didn't play enough of it to really get hooked on it or anything. I saw, I think, a few frustrated Steam comments regarding the difficulty. I think, yeah, it was kind of punishing, but not that hard, honestly, just not that fun. So it's an overall, I think, interesting game that's different enough to stand out, but it's nothing impressive. So it's gonna go in C tier for me. But again, definitely interesting, and I'm glad it exists, honestly, because of how different it feels. And you probably should try it if you're looking for something different and you're tired of the old Slay the Spire formula. Next one is Isle of Swaps, which is a Pokemon-themed roguelike deck builder. I have to admit, unfortunately, I have just played 1 hour and a half-ish something of this, and it did not go as well as I thought. I could not really get the hang of it. I knew reviews were really positive on Steam, and so I always kind of wanted to give it a try, but really didn't find the energy to do so. It was just too confusing. It's not like Pokemon-y enough. I wanted like to be, I don't know, opening booster packs or having crazy OP builds, and I just found myself reading through so many cards and clicking through so many boxes of UI. Maybe do this game again, but make it more accessible for people like me who hate reading and clicking. And so for now, C tier, but this one I might go and try it again. I should probably. Jupiter Moon's Mecha now is a roguelike deck builder that when I played it 2 or 3 months ago was just a demo on Steam, but I decided to put it on my list anyway, just because I thought, wow, this game is absolutely everything my younger self, like the little boy version of me, would have loved. I'm talking big robots, mechs, laser beams, 3D combat, energy push, Gatling guns kind of stuff. And so yeah, if you're into that, or if you want to pay a tribute to the young boy inside of you, give it a try, and I'll definitely be playing Jupiter Moon's Mecha when it comes out. And so for now, not enough played. Knock on the Coffin Lid now is a roguelike deck builder that I played, I think, last summer, maybe last spring, early 2024. And I remember telling myself, oh, this game's never getting a full release. It's been in early access since 2020. And I think, I haven't checked, but I think I spoke too soon, because I saw last time I logged in on Steam an advertisement for a full release of the game on my main shop page. And so I have not played the full version if it's been released. I think it must be good, because the demo was already very good in many ways. It had a lot of small animation, big attention to details. It had obviously a budget, and it was obviously made by people who know how to make games. Was very agreeable to play in all ways, simple to pick up, colorful. I was overall very surprised by Knock on the Coffin Lid. I remember thinking, oh yeah, some of the items are definitely busted, and they let you do crazy builds that you're just gonna do once. And like you're reading the card or the item twice, and then you're telling yourself, wow, it can really do that. You almost don't believe it, but then you see the interactions and you destroy the game, and then next run things don't line up, and then you get completely killed by the enemies. And so it made you feel good, roguelike deck builder sensations. It knew what it was doing. Again, probably not my favorite one of them all, just because it was story based, if I remember. Although the story is not too present, it's not too distracting, it's alright. There's no tutorial, at least there was no tutorial in the version I played. So usually I like that, but the game was complicated in some ways. I remember feeling lost for 45 minutes on some characters. So the few first runs were definitely hard. You had to, like, there was an entrance fee for the game. So yeah, what I thought at the time was there's some really good stuff, some maybe a little too busted or balance issues, like stuff that can definitely be worked on and improved. And so if they improve that in the final version that I haven't played, this game can be a high ranking game. For now, for me, it's kind of a high B tier, but I'm sure if I play it again, it can go up to A tier. Legends of Runeterra Path of Champions is the roguelike deck builder version of the Riot Games card game, Legends of Runeterra, that's taking place in the same universe as League of Legends. And so, as you probably know, Riot Games is not an indie video game company, and so nothing in this list really comes close to what Legends of Runeterra is doing in terms of sound animation. It is just crazy how every encounter is voiced over. Every detail of the environment has its own sound and animation. Again, it's just in a league of its own, and no other game in this list really can match the production value of Legends of Runeterra Path of Champions. It is the main thing that it has going for it. It's tremendous budget, the high production value. The league characters are quite charming. The gameplay itself is fine, just nothing revolutionary. So there's a cool feel to it, and I did play some League of Legends back in the day, and so I thought it was nice to recognize familiar faces and meet some of the old champions I liked again. It is maybe the biggest AAA of the genre. It is not the one I played the most, just because it's not the most unique, and there's a very big Riot Games feel to it that you have to be ready for. I did not finish all of the campaigns, but I think I might someday because it's just an incredible, beautiful game. And so Legends of Runeterra Path of Champions goes into A tier. Liberté, or Liberté as I'd say in French, is an action RPG roguelike with some deck building elements in it. It is not really a Slay the Spire-like game. It's just making a lot of roguelike deck builder lists somehow, and so I thought I'd review it. It's pretty much just a solid action game, and the deck building is not really the main thing, and it's not really that interesting either. You go into runs with a deck of cards that is going to be your attacks and perks in Paris during the French Revolution. It's just okay, a little rough around the edges, and it deserves a C tier, just because it's not a roguelike deck builder really in the same way that Slay the Spire is. I just saw I had Lords of Ravage in there, and I think Lords of Ravage is not out yet, and I don't think I played it. I'm not sure why I put it there. It's just gonna go not played enough yet. The next one though is Lost for Swords. Lost for Swords I did play, and it was a very neat little puzzle game. I think it was just a demo when I played it, but it was already putting down some good basics of a card game where you do some deck building, but the biggest part of it is just the puzzle. When you enter a room, your cards are untiled and then you gotta walk on them. And it's very important to trim your deck to only have the select items that you really want to kill monsters pop up. I just put it in the list because it's just a fun, effective little thing. It's just not my favorite, but it deserves to go in B tier. It's a lot of fun. Now, Monastery is a roguelike deck builder that's been in early access since 2023. I haven't checked recently, but when I played, it was just a very small demo early access game, Darkest Dungeon vibes, but it's in a pure deck builder Slay the Spire-like form. It puts you right in, and you'll understand the game right away if you played Slay the Spire. I quite like that. No fancy mechanics, just a pure Slay the Spire-like with its own visual identity. Honestly, I did a few runs. It's your typical poison, bleed, burn, block builds. Very reminiscent of a lot of other games, but it does it well. And actually, I don't mind a game doing like the others with its unique style, at least visually, and I think it's good. So I have not played a lot of it. I don't think the full game is out yet, but for now it's gonna go in B tier. Now, Monster Slayers is a game that I realize I have not played enough to rate, honestly. It's in my Steam library, I believe right now. It's just, I don't think the characters are very pretty, and so I never actually clicked on play. I'm sorry about that. I'm gonna play it soon. I don't like this style of drawing at all. I think it looks so childish. It reminds me of the old Flash game that we used to play when we were kids, like Congregate.com and stuff. Honestly, it looks good. I've read the reviews. People are kind of thrilled by it, and so I'll definitely play it once I get over the small chibi ugly faces. Right now, not played enough. Finally got to Monster Train, the legendary game. What can I say about Monster Train that's not been said already, right? It has been with Slay the Spire, just alongside it, the king of the genre for quite a while now. I even think Monster Train might be discussed and talked about more these days. Maybe that'll change with the Slay the Spire 2 coming out, but Monster Train, I think it might be even more replayable than Slay the Spire is. To be fair, when you take the two kings of the genre, Monster Train and Slay the Spire, I've always been more leaning towards the Slay the Spire side, because I always like playing a character. I know it sounds childish, but that's what it is. Monster Train kind of confused me at first. When I played it for the first time, I remember I was like, oh, can't I just like skip the other guys, just play the main guy of the deck? Anyway, Monster Train, I still think it's like, I can't say anything bad about it, just because it's such a staple. It really is just a cornerstone of gaming because of all the doors it opened, all of the specific stuff it does to perfection. I remember just seeing the map and thinking, oh, okay, this is now it's going to be made now. The map is just perfect. The way everything is balanced is perfect. Every build that you do is going to be interesting and make you finish your run and want to start another one. It's just the king. I have nothing else to say. I have nothing bad to say about Monster Train. It is not my absolute favorite of all time because of the character thing. I just think it is quite honestly flawless, and it deserves an easy S tier. Going through this list, I realized I have a lot more early access games and demo games than I thought. Next one is no exception. Moon's Creed Prologue is a roguelike deck builder that's in early access. And the Prologue, as they call it, is kind of just a demo. It's a roguelike deck builder themed around zodiac signs. I think it has, honestly, an identity of its own. It is very rough around the edges. As of right now, it doesn't have any like huge twists in gameplay comparing to your typical roguelike deck builder. It's just a quite fun and normal roguelike deck builder. I don't think I have played with my sign, which is Leo, and I probably will play the game again to experience what the Leo guy is, and is he OP. It felt, I wrote in my notes, it felt quite good, honestly, to play a regular roguelike deck builder, just because you don't have to read the tutorial or anything. It's just a Slay the Spire clone. But honestly, it does not deserve right now to go above C tier. Now, Mori Carta is a fun little game with a unique concept that I had never seen before. Basically, it's a sort of solitaire game where you swipe cards left and right, and you play both your deck and the enemies kind of at the same time. It's puzzly, it's simple, it's like a basic system for a game that's fun. It's just nothing more than that. And I'm not the biggest fan of puzzle games in this very form. Plus, it's got quite bad animations. Like, it deserves better wrapping around it. Like, it deserves better animation, better sound, better graphics overall. But it's not bad. The concept in itself, like, they found a little something that's good and then they did it, but nothing more. If you're interested in like the card solitaire type of fight, go for it. It's not bad at all. I definitely found myself like playing a few more runs than I first thought I would. And so Mori Carta is gonna be in the high, maybe low B tier. Low B tier because it's good. Has some fun combos, fun cards, just a little too puzzly. Next game is Museum Mystery. That's a quite new, fairly intriguing Russian game. Roguelike deck builder mixed with mystery adventure. Funny thing, first time I played it, I thought it reminded me kind of I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, the old school point and click Scooby-Doo mystery games that I used to play when I was a kid. There's something good about it. It feels like it was made with good intentions. Like, it has good ideas at its core. I think they're still updating the game. It needs a lot more to be a fun game, but it's quite cool. The story basically is you're kind of Ben Stiller in a night at the museum, but it's a roguelike deck builder, and when you encounter something that wakes up in the museum, you gotta fight it with a deck of cards, and then you venture through the rooms and you upgrade your character and your story. It's interesting. It's a fun concept. I think it was made with good intentions. I don't want to put this in C tier because I think right now it deserves a C tier because it's like repetitive and not very unique in the fighting, and it feels like clunky to play. It's too long. The runs are too long also. But I think I think I'm gonna be a kind soul today and put Museum Mystery in B tier because of how I like the museum concept and how it was made with good intentions. So B tier for Museum Mystery. Mysteries of Darkness, it's another one of those that's very low budget, another one of those cheap roguelike deck builders that has like 10 reviews on Steam. Honestly, I'm not gonna say too much about this one. It's just, it does not deserve to be talked about that much. I'm just gonna say at its core, it's not a bad game. It has a unique visual identity. It's not like, it shows that the people making this know how to make video games. It's just probably made with a small budget, and it has like 10 reviews on Steam, which is pretty sad. It deserves more. It has like a bad font. Again, I'm very sensitive to this stuff, but I feel like I said this for at least 10 games in this list. Like the font, come on, the font on cards. It's so bad. Just change this. Put like Garamond or something. I'm pretty sure it's Comic Sans, actually. Anyway. You pick a guy, there's a world map, you fight enemies, you build the deck. You know how it is by now. It's another one of those. Honestly, it's gonna go in C tier. I know that there's a neat little forge system for the cards. I thought it was good. Despite all of that, it's gonna be like your most basic of basic games. And so, yeah, I think it's C tier. But not a bad game. And I think the guys making this, if they make another game with like 10 times the budget, I'm gonna play it for sure. Okay, maybe like 10 times was far-fetched, maybe twice. Like, give them twice the budget, and then we're gonna talk. Nadir now. And Nadir is a roguelike deck builder in a very grim, dark setting. I think it has beautiful graphics, right? It is very interesting. I love the world map. That's basically a vertical dive into hell, like a wormhole type thing. I think had a few problems. The reviews on Steam are not very good. I think they're mixed, and probably the developers thought the game would be a better success, like a bigger success than it actually was, because the game is quite pricey. Like it's got a big like supporter founder pack or whatever. I think it deserves overall like a better rap than it got. It's not a bad game at all. I think its problem, I tend to agree with some of the Steam comments saying the wrapping is gorgeous and then the game itself is quite shallow, feels quite shallow to play. It's like not enough. But if you're into the aesthetics, if you're into the grim, dark fantasy stuff, you should definitely try Nadir out. Also, Nietzsche is the guy explaining the game to you. Like the tutorial is narrated by Nietzsche. And that alone, like if you don't play Nadir, at least you should play the tutorial to have Nietzsche tell you about rules of a roguelike deck builder, which is quite unique, once in a lifetime thing. Overall, yeah, that's it. It's not my favorite. It's not amazing, but it kind of deserves better than it got. So Nadir is gonna go in B tier for me. Next up on the list is Neoverse. I won't keep you guys in suspense for too long. Neoverse, the moment I played it for the first time, was an instant classic for me. It was, I think, my biggest discovery of 2024. I have played, unfortunately, an unnameable number of hours of Neoverse. I can't stress enough how good this game is. With maybe one or two other games on here is the reason I became so obsessed with roguelike deck builders and will probably always be one of my favorites of all time. I can't really explain the magic of Neoverse. A part of myself really wanted to hate this game because when I launched it for the first time, for those who've never heard of it, well, the 3 characters that are playable are, let's say they were just made by very horny developers who, well, most of the meta progression in this game is like buying more and more revealing outfits for your girls. Everything from the costumes to the voice acting, it's all very yeah, the clothes are skimpy. I would advise you close your curtains when you play this. There's a very weeb-ish atmosphere going for this game, but all of the rest really works, and it's very solid from A to Z. The full 3D is beautiful. Colors, enemies, animations, sounds. Most of it is a very great taste. The game uses so many systems that were instant classics that should be now just the genre standard. I'm talking about the mission system between fights, the shop system, the skill tree, the different game modes like the hunter mode, the adventure mode, the way meta progression is implemented, just as costumes and minor game-changing items. Just most of what the game is doing is top tier of the genre compared to the rest that's being done with roguelike deck builders right now. Neoverse is just on top of everything. Just to mention like a few of the genius ideas that this game had. For example, it's got most of the card removal and deck crafting as reward for challenges, the missions I was mentioning. You pick them before a fight and then you're gonna have, for example, to activate a combo 5 times or kill the enemy with the exact damage, block X amount of damage, etc. Everything is a very tight balance and you can pick your mission depending on how risky you want your fight to be. It's just the right amount of complexity and you can go in details and really with the nitty-gritty of the deck building. It's a lot of fun. Sometimes playing Neoverse, I could literally stop and think about amount of gold down to the pennies, think about deck strategies for hours and think about deck strategy for minutes. Just stand there, read cards, calculate, and it was just so much fun. And the game didn't really force me to do that, but the deck building was just so fun that there was a big enough incentive for me to do so. You will find yourself wanting to play another run every time just because, oh god, I could have put X amount of this card instead of this card and I could have saved X more gold at that very stage. And it's all very tightly put together. It's also very welcoming and very clear. Whatever type of player you are, you're gonna find something that you like in Neoverse. It is simple to pick up, hard to master, beautifully crafted. It's interesting in every way, and for this reason you're gonna play a lot more Neoverse than you originally thought you would, and for this reason Neoverse earns a spot in S tier. Although don't show my mom the costumes I picked for my girls in this game. As long as she doesn't know, I'm gonna keep on playing Neoverse. Neurodeck now is a peculiar roguelike deck builder that has an educational spin on it. It feels like this was made by some association of psychologists or people interested in mental health. You're basically playing a little girl and she has anxiety, depression, and the cards in her deck are going to be activities that she does during her day to ease her pain, and her enemies are going to be like all sorts of mental health issues. I feel like this game was made with obviously a neat packaging, beautiful graphics, good intentions, but it's just not a very unique and polished video game in itself. It's not very interesting as of roguelike deck builders, and I don't care more than that about the theme. And so for me, Neurodeck is just a very basic C-tier roguelike deck builder, although I can see for someone who cared more about the theme and thought it was very interesting, I could see this being worth your time. Next one is Night of the Full Moon, which I actually played on iOS. It's one of the few mobile games on the list. I think it's also on PC, but I did not succeed trying to run the PC version. I think it's completely bugged right now. The iOS version is great though. It can be a good game to play while commuting in the morning, if you're taking the bus or the subway. Not if you're the one driving. That would be illegal in most places. It has a small concept of its own with a little 3 cards, pick a card adventure system, reminiscent of Banners of Ruin. So yeah, if you've got a phone, you have to commute in the morning to get to work, might be worth your time if you're really craving roguelike deck builders like I am. I've been playing this on my phone for a while now. And also, I don't think there are ads in this. You can just pay for expansion packs and stuff, but the gameplay itself is completely ad-free. So it is, yeah, just a charming, simple little iOS game that is gonna go in B tier. Nitro Kid now is a roguelike tactical deck builder that is very cool looking. It's a bit reminiscent of Fights in Tight Spaces, but imagine in pixel art with a top-down view and with tactical elements in gameplay that remind me of one of the good games I played this year, that was Into the Breach. And by that I mean it's pretty clear what you have to do in a combat. It's quite simple. The deck building is alright, but there's nothing unusual with it. It's just alright. The cards and the builds are fun, but what makes this game enjoyable mostly is techno music, a nice atmosphere, just the overall like Asian kung fu in a train style action gameplay is just refreshing as of roguelike deck builder themes. It has a high production value in general. It's just not my favorite, again, genre of games. in this list. And so just because it has everything, if you're someone who likes that stuff, this could be your S tier game, because I don't see any real problem with Nitro Kid. I'm just gonna put it in A tier because I think it's very solid. Well, you know what? I haven't played a lot of it. Maybe it deserves, for now, high B tier, but then it could be a A tier for you if you're really into fights and time spaces and tactical roguelike deck builders. Numazu and the Mirage, coming up next, now is an anime girls roguelike deck builder that I have played. I have tried it and I just could not get the hang of it. It was just too much for me. I should probably start with lighter games, and lighter in terms of anime girls moaning and being dressed like pole dancers. Yeah, that was just a bit too much for me. I don't think the game is bad at all. I just think it's fairly simple and it could not hold my attention in any special way. I was just focused on the fact that I was me, a grown man, playing with anime girls dressed in bathing suits, a fighting card game. And yeah, it made me just close this at some point. And so I'm just gonna, for the sake of it, I'll put it in not played enough, but know that I probably won't go back to it again. Not extensively, at least. Now, Over Dungeon is a roguelike deck builder with tower defense elements, real-time combat. Basically, you fill the board with animals and you watch them attack the enemy. I think most people won't love or hate this game deeply. It's just a bit meh. It is a crazy game with tons of sprites on screen. Most runs I don't even, like most runs I did not even really bother read the effects of every single little thing. You just spam your cards and hope for the best, at least for me. It was like way too crazy and convoluted to deserve any high spot in the list whatsoever. But it's funny. It's a funny game. I might never come back to it actually, but I'd suggest you give it a try. If just watching the trailer gives you like you feel any interest at all. There is no other roguelike where you're gonna have 200 polar bears rushing towards a big demon. I mean, it's crazy. It's an absolutely crazy game, right? That I did not play for too long. So C tier for Over Dungeon. And now Over Rogue is a visually not very special roguelike deck builder. Maybe for some of you it is. For me, it looks like something that was made on RPG Maker. I'm not sure. It probably wasn't, but that's what it makes me think of. It is very much of an old school JRPG style roguelike deck builder with a lot of text to read. A lot of, you know what I mean, like Final Fantasy style stories, and you gotta click through thousands of boxes of text to get to the deck building part. That one tired me infinitely. I can't even begin to describe how much this game bored me. I just can't. With those JRPG stories, I can't. You got quests, you got a base you can go to. I noted there are a few twists in the fighting, like you gotta manage position of your party, whatever. UI is very clunky, the builds are pretty boring. I do not recommend you play Over Rogue. I think it's a waste of time. And so Over Rogue is gonna go, unfortunately, in the D tier. Our last contender for today is Obsidian Prince, which is not really, again, a real pure Slay the Spire like. It's more of a tactical roguelike deck builder that mixes some elements of deck building with base building and dungeon crawler tactical game. It's not a bad one. It's for sure very charming. It has pretty graphics, pretty card. The builds are not anything out of this world. It's just your basic little management sim roguelike deck builder. And for that, just for the sake of being something that's good and does its own thing without being anything too special and without being a game changer in the genre, I'm just thinking, also since it's the last game on the list, I'm just thinking I'm feeling good today. I'm gonna give Obsidian Prince a B tier. And that is gonna be it for part 2. I played a few roguelike deck builders in the meantime while making those videos, and so I think we're in the end gonna go way over 150. We'll see how many I can include in the third part, but yeah, there are many left to rank. And so see you guys then. You can subscribe to the channel to be sure not to miss it. It's gonna be a big one, and there are some true classics that are coming. and so stay tuned.